Navigating hobbies as an adult, well, it's kind of confusing. Like every adult in their 20s, I recently picked up running. I even got myself to run a few half marathons, full marathons, and even an ultra marathon. Running was very much a goal and accomplishment type of dynamic, but after recently prepping and running the Chicago Marathon, I realized I missed having a hobby that was more of an escape for me.
But I don't actually like running just for the sake of running. I mean, most people don't. When I was younger, I remember having just so many hobbies and doing so many different activities because, well, I just had way too much time on my hands.
Life since then has obviously become a lot more stressful, and there's obviously a lot more responsibilities that I have to deal with now. I feel like my time is constantly being tugged in so many different directions. I'm spending time with my loved ones, spending time in the hospital, trying to come up with YouTube ideas, and whatever other thing that I sign myself up for. And I know I'm doing this to myself.
Since time feels so limited now, I feel like I have this urge to approach everything and optimize everything. That way I get the most out of my time. But that brings me to a new problem that I have, which is that I always approach all these new hobbies and all these new activities through a lens of productivity. Now, being optimal is great because you're getting the most out of your time and you're being super efficient, and it's always great until it's not. I don't want my hobbies to feel like work. I don't want them to feel rushed. I don't want to always approach everything with this lens of productivity. I'd rather have a hobby that filled my cup and didn't feel like it was more work. I feel like I've been stuck in this monotonous loop and it's time for a change. And like all great ideas, the best way to move forward is kind of looking back and seeing where we started.
I decided that today is the day that I got back into breaking. Watching breaking on the Olympics was a pretty surreal moment for me and something that I never would have imagined back in the day when I was 12 or 13 practicing in the garage. Breaking has been a hobby of mine that I've always been really deep into, but I started practicing less and less the farther I got into school. I had this really weird idea in my head that I couldn't be good while simultaneously focusing on my education, which was absolutely an excuse at the time. Watching Hong Ten, one of my heroes in breaking growing up, competing at the Olympics at the age of 39 was a huge reminder that I'm still really young and capable of improving. Not only was he competing in the Olympics, but he's been competing on the international level after decades. Lately, I've been questioning the attitude that we should outgrow some of our childhood hobbies and passions just because we're getting older. Maybe it's for healing your inner child, or maybe it's just simply nostalgia. But there's nothing quite like the spark you feel when you remember a game you used to play or an activity that you used to do. And all of this sounds amazing, but there is a bit of reality that we need to come to terms with. We are getting older.
Ow.
So I'm realizing that even though I am young and still am able to challenge myself with these moves, I'm definitely not as young and invincible as I used to be. All the bumping and banging definitely hurts a lot more, so I'm figuring out pretty quickly that I need to warm up and approach things smarter. On top of that, it is a bit frustrating to be struggling with moves that I had mastered years ago, but I haven't consistently practiced in years. I'm constantly needing to remind myself to humble myself and give myself some grace here. I'm automatically falling into that productivity mindset again, so I'm really trying to remind myself to enjoy the process and what I'm doing. One of the biggest roadblocks for adults is the fear of being bad at something. But hobbies aren't about being perfect, they're about enjoyment. When we were kids, we didn't care if we were good at something, we just did it. No expectations, no deadlines. It was pure joy. And you know what? I think we need that in our adult lives. It reminds us that we're more than just workers or problem solvers. We're also creators, explorers, and dreamers. So I took the plunge. I started small. I practiced the basics and challenged myself with the simple combos. I didn't try to be a perfectionist. I just let myself enjoy the process. That sense of accomplishment, working on a move or a combo over and over again until finally you hit it, that's an indescribable feeling. And it makes all the aches and pains worth it.
Picking up and balancing hobbies with a busy schedule has been pretty tough for me, especially when I was rotating through busier specialties like OB/GYN and surgery. With that being said though, there's some things that I've been trying to remind myself when things have been getting busier.
Firstly, start small. Don't overwhelm yourself by thinking you need to dedicate hours to something. Just try 15 minutes a day. Pick up the paintbrush, strum your guitar, or journal for just a bit. Just let yourself enjoy the moment. Especially with physical hobbies, getting injured is just going to put you behind or completely discourage you from keeping up with it. Next, make it low stakes. I always have to remind myself that you're doing this for fun.
So stop coming at it through the lens of productivity. The goal isn't to be perfect, right? The goal is to rediscover the joy of creating.
A hobby to escape with is such a powerful use of your time, especially when so much of your day is already dedicated to getting things done. Let your hobbies actually be hobbies. Now, don't wait for a gap in your schedule. Put your hobby in the schedule. You don't need hours, but blocking out some time each week for your hobby helps make it a priority. Whether it's every Saturday morning or 30 minutes before bed, make it a non-negotiable.
And I'll admit it, just like I said earlier, during those busier rotations, I felt like I didn't have enough time in the day and it was really hard to keep this up. I had to be in the hospital for hours and hours and hours, and then I would come home and have to study, do practice questions for my shelf exams. So it was a lot, but what helped me through it was just really enforcing this on myself and really trying to stay consistent with it.
And lastly, don't be afraid to fail. Remember, as kids, we weren't worried about making mistakes. We just did things because we enjoyed them. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Especially as we get older, it's really hard to put yourself out there. I think it's because we hold this expectation over ourselves to portray ourselves in a certain way, more mature and more dignified. This obviously gets in the way of a lot, especially with a hobby like breaking. It can be really embarrassing falling on your face in public in front of everyone, but I've been better at reminding myself that it's all okay.
And obviously I'm still figuring things out as I go, but these are just the things that I've been trying to keep in mind as I'm going on through this journey, and they've been serving me very well, so hopefully you guys find them helpful too.